Hello, everyone, and welcome to OLA 2020. Thank you so much for joining us for this session, which is Branching Out, Getting the Most from Outside Events. My name is Allison Hayes, and I am the incoming chair for the Public Library Division. I'm so happy to moderate this session, and today I am joined by our presenters, Kat Lefevre, who is the Assistant Manager at Martin Regional Library, and Tracy Scott, who is the Manager of Literacy, Outreach, and Volunteer Services. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them.
All right, welcome.
Welcome.
Let's see, I'm Kat.
And I'm Tracy.
And we're going to take you through this presentation and hopefully not bore you too much. So as you know, Branching Out is the title of our program. We've broken it down into 4 sections, and we'll be coming back to the slide periodically, so you can kind of have an idea of how far along you are in this torture session. So we're going to start obviously with our introduction, and our point in this is to make your outreach event participation as a branch staff person, not an outreach person, but as a branch staff person, smooth, easy, or at least easier, and productive from both staff and administration points of view.
And remember, you don't have to be an outreach person to do outreach. Anyone in your organization can do outreach because you already do it, whether you think of it as not coming from behind your services to help someone is a form of outreach. So this is just expanding that so everyone knows that anyone can do outreach.
So our learning outcomes of this, you will at the end know how to identify the needs for effectively representing and promoting the library at community events. You'll refine a checklist that will help guide the planning process for participating in non-library community events, and we will be giving out a checklist at the end. We'll prepare a plan that includes information about the event that can be used to quickly and easily update all administrators and library participants about the event. So why do we want to go do this? Why do we want to go out into the community and talk to people? The really important thing is exposure to new audiences. So we have people that come into the library, but not everyone in our community comes into our library. So a big part of going out is to see people that you don't normally see.
We are frequently missing people when we stay in our building. There are large segments of all of our communities that don't access us for a variety of reasons. So by being outside of the library, you are meeting those people where they are.
And you are building stronger relationships within your community and with those people that you don't normally see. And it's not just the people that you don't see coming into your building that you want to reach. You also want to build relationships with other service providers. That's a big opportunity when you're at an event, is to talk to those other people who are there with you.
And you may find as you are working and meeting these other service providers, they may provide services, resources that you're not aware of that not only will help you and your colleagues, but potentially help the customer you're serving. The more you know by what's available in the community, the more you can help the customers that you do have in your buildings.
So who are we? We've got Tracy. She's amazing. She started at the Martin Regional Library as the assistant manager, then moved on to South Broken Arrow, and she's been at outreach for quite a while now. So she is the expert.
I would not say I'm the expert. I've just been doing it a little longer, but I'm definitely not the expert.
So I blame Tracy for everything pretty much. I started at the library as a volunteer and then moved into a substitute role. Tracy trained me at that. Then I moved into outreach and did all kinds of different jobs there. And then almost 3 years ago, not quite 3 years, I moved into the Martin Regional Library Assistant Manager position, which is the position that Tracy's kind of started in. So,
and Kat is amazing, I have to say. She didn't pay me to say that, but she is truly amazing.
So this is one of the vehicles that we have in our outreach department. Obviously, this is pretty fancy. You're probably not going to have quite the same thing. You're definitely not when you go out as a branch person, but just to kind of give you an idea of where we're coming from. And this is an event that started actually at Martin, where both Tracy and I have ties. And this started as a back to school resource fair with about 300 people. I think it was about 5 years ago. And it has grown, it outgrew our building very quickly. And this last time, I think we had 1,700 people. So this is not the most current one, but the one before that. And the lady in the brown shirt there in the front is my boss. And these are wild events, but they're really, really important. And it's fun to go out into the community and see these people and go, hey, I know you, and the kids come up and talk to you. It's quite fun.
And
So,
again, you may meet people that you haven't seen in a while, as Kat said, or people that may have forgotten that the library was around, or may not have even known you were there, because some people don't actually know we exist. I know it's hard for us to believe, but there are some people that don't realize that we are here, or the type of services and resources we provide now in 2020, they may have an antiquated idea. So getting out in these at these types of events helps share that message.
So one thing that we do need to make very clear, obviously this whole presentation was created in pre-pandemic times. So while we really hope that a lot of the information in here is very, very useful, it may not be immediately useful, but some of it you can still translate into doing things virtually and using it in different ways. So it's just one of those things to be aware of. So that covers the introduction. Let's go into planning. Planning your timeline and information about the event. This is probably the most critical part of the whole puzzle. So the more preparation you do, the more information you gather, the better your event is going to go. So timeline, how much time do you actually need? This is kind of a point of contention in many outreach departments because people will sometimes call and say, I have an event next week. Can you guys come? So you need to think about how much is your time, how much time you really need. Is it 6 weeks? That's typically in an outreach department what people really want. Is 1 week going to be enough? What is your actual minimum? And keep in mind that the more people involved mean you're going to need more time.
And one thing also to keep in mind is the more time you have, that allows you to prepare not only for the expected, but the inevitable unexpected, because there will be things that are unexpected that you just can't plan for. So the more time you have will allow you to be able to adjust and address those unexpected things as well.
So gathering information, this is a big part. So first thing you want to talk about is when is it? That ties back to your timeline. Do you have enough lead time? What time of day is it also factors into that? Do you have the staff available for that? If you're going to go, is somebody going to cover what you would normally be doing during that time? Or, you know, if 3 people from your department are going to go, or if you've got people pulling in from different branches, how is all that going to work? So that's an important part of when. So what? These are kind of, you think these are basic questions, but there's a lot that goes into all of these. So what is the event? Does it align with the library's mission and purpose? If it's, say, a commercial thing where it's somebody's, help me out here, Tracy.
If it is a for-profit event, does that fit in with your mission? Oftentimes we will get requests from businesses who are holding events who want to have the library, who, because we have such a great reputation, want to have us participate. Is that an appropriate organization, business, event that you need to participate in? So knowing what it is can really help you define if it's appropriate for you to be there.
So who is a big part of the puzzle? Who's your audience? Is it mostly adults? Is it young kids? Is it seniors? Is it teens? You may not bring the same thing to an event that has a whole bunch of teens that you would if it were young kids or senior citizens. What kind of language needs do they have? Is it primarily in English? Is it in Spanish? Are there any deaf audience members? So are you going to need to take different people with you in order to fulfill the needs of that audience? Are there different cultural or religious concerns that you need to think about before you attend an event? So just lots of different things that go into thinking about who really is your audience at this event. So where is the last piece of this particular puzzle? Is it inside? Is it outside? Is there shade? Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? What kinds? Is there going to be wind? Wind is a thing. It is a huge thing. So if there's any chance of wind, you want to make sure you have rocks or something to weigh down your papers or whatever it is that you're handing out. So these are all good questions to think about as you're planning your event. Another critical piece of that, is it in your service area? So if it's, you know, not in some place that you normally think you'd be pulling people from, you might want to really think about if that's an appropriate place.
And all of these things really help you determine who should be going to this event. That is really, really key. If it's not in your service area, maybe you partner with someone else in your organization, or maybe you pass this opportunity along to them because it's not a good fit or appropriate for you to go. So being able to answer these questions really can help you fine tune what resources, and of course, staffing is our most important resource, need to participate in this available.
So another really important part of your planning process is thinking about why will the library attend this event? Who decided that this would be a good idea? Which sounds kind of flippant, but it's a big deal. What are their expectations for the event? So if what administration thinks the event is going to be and wants us to attend is different than what our information gathering says, that's a pretty important piece that we need to make sure those two people are connecting, or that there's good communication about that. So is the desired outcome that we have more people attending the library? They want just general publicity? Is it a particular program that they want to push? Do they understand that building relationships with other services is the most important thing, and they don't really have any other outcome that they want? So just making sure that everybody is clear on that is pretty important. So the reason I have the gears going down here is because if one part of this doesn't work, your event is going to have issues either before, during, or after.
And I would again reiterate, as Kat said, it's very, very important that you are in communication with your administration. In particular, if this event has political implications, if it has financial implications, if there will be important stakeholders that are involved that may attend, it's very, very important to keep administration in the loop about this event and as many details as you can and as soon as possible. I know I frequently get requests for events from political figures, some of our well-endowed individuals in our community. So it's very important that I'm communicating those requests to our administration to make sure that I am fitting in with our mission and our vision. And there may be things going on that I'm not aware of. And so I need to make sure that I am keeping them aware of all of those things, because the last thing I want to do is put our organization, my administration, or my team or myself in an awkward or inappropriate situation.
And the last thing you want to have happen is for your boss or boss's boss to show up at an event and go, I didn't know we were going to be here. Do not want that to happen.
You do not want that to happen. Do not.
There are long-reaching implications for that.
Yes.
Let's see. So additional questions. There's kind of a lot going on here, but who is the point person? So not only the point person of the library for this event, but also for the event itself. So are you the main point person? Are you working with somebody who is the main point person? Or is it somebody from an outreach department? Is it another department? Just make sure that you know who that is so that you know who to contact if there's something going on. Who has the authority to cancel the library's participation in the event? This is kind of important. It doesn't come up very often, but when it does, you really, really, really want that information. So let's say that some catastrophic thing happens and your car breaks down, you get into an accident, there's emergency construction. We need to find out who has the authority to cancel the library's attendance. So if you're supposed to be there and whoever has the authority decides that even though you are not going to be able to be there, somebody else needs to go in your place, that's important to know, if you can't make that decision. And then if you do have to cancel, do you have the contact information for the person who's running the event? Do you have the contact information for everybody who needs to know? Let's say your boss is planning to attend the event, not as a library person, but just, as an attendee, and they're expecting to see you there and you're not there. Do you have information about contacting them or their boss's boss, up the chain? So important things to think about. We had one thing where there was a chance of a tornado, and trying to get that information to all the people who needed to know exposed some gaps in that information chain. Which brings up the chain of notification. So typically there's not just one person that you need to notify. You need to notify a couple of different people. And so if you have all that information, that makes that whole process a lot easier. Occasionally also the point person of the event, not on the library side, but on the event side, disappears. And so do you have multiple ways to contact whatever's going on there? Because that's not fun. When you're planning for an event and all of a sudden people stop responding and you don't know who else to contact. You don't know if the event's going to go on. So do you just go anyway? It doesn't happen very often again, but when it does, you really want that information.
And again, as much information as you can gather, any question you can think of, it's better to have that information. One thing we have found helpful is we have a shared file, a Google Drive, that we can share all of the information. So even if I am scheduled to attend an event, as Kat said, and something happens, my car breaks down, I can't go, I can call her or someone else on the team and say, hey, I can't go, this happened, I really need you to go do this. And that person can pull up that information that has all of this information, point people, where we're parking, where we're unloading, what do we need to bring, as much information as we can. In many ways, it's a dump of information. So that way, anyone in the department with a reasonable amount of notice can represent the library at this event. It won't be as much as if you've had 6 weeks to prepare, as Kat says, but it does provide a way of sharing information so that way you can still participate in the event.
Food poisoning is a thing. That's all I'm going to say about that. And it's happened more than once.
It is a thing.
So another thing to think about as you're preparing is, what is the library providing, or what have the event organizers asked that you provide? So making sure that that is all very clear is super important. We went to an event one time where we were prepared to do a story time. And so we had chosen books, we had the whole thing, you know, because we are information professionals and many of us have had training, specific training on performing story times. And we got there, and all of a sudden, there were a bunch of kids in front of where we were, and there were volunteers who came and just grabbed random books and started reading to the kids. And we realized that we were a backdrop for somebody's publicity event. So you want to be really, 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 really clear about what's going on and what's expected. So,
oh, sorry, Kat.
No, go ahead.
You definitely have to be prepared, as Kat said, for the unexpected. In that particular situation, we had documented all of the communication we had. So if there had been any questions in the future from administration or anyone, we were able to show that we were prepared based on this information to do the story time. We were not simply a backdrop. That is not the information that we had. So again, asking those questions and documenting that can be a lifesaver in many, many cases.
Needless to say, we haven't worked with that group again.
Not at all. And we do have a list of organizations or individuals generally that it's just not a good fit. We didn't have an optimal experience, or if we do plan to participate with them in the future, maybe it will be in a different sort of way than it was originally, because the original opportunity just didn't work out for whatever reason.
And this is part of that relationship building with your community, is you'll find out pretty quick which events to continue and which ones to avoid. So as you plan for all of these different types of things that you're providing, obviously the needs for each of those things is going to be quite different.
And you can also think about the fact that if you do get a request and you're not able to attend in the way they request, you have lots of different options potentially. Or if you're not able to attend at all, maybe you can send some materials for their information table. Maybe you can send some giveaway books. So maybe there's some version of some of these that still allow you to have a presence if you can't physically be there for a variety of reasons.
So we've touched on this a little bit, that communication is absolutely key. You want to make sure that everybody involved has tons of information, or all the information that they need to actually do the event. So the more you can communicate with other people, the more you can divide the labor and the work that's involved in it. It really, if you're working with somebody else in a different branch, it really fosters that collaborative feeling, you know, and effort, and builds good relationships with other people as well, you know, just within your branch or within your library system. And nobody wants to feel like they don't have all the information, or like they've been just sideswiped with an unexpected situation. So one of the coping mechanisms that I and a lot of other introverts have is that we want to be super, super prepared. So if I walk into a situation and I haven't had all of the information, and I get, you know, surprised with something, that is very anxiety inducing for me. And so the more communication that you can do with people involved, the better.
And you want to do it as frequently as possible, and you want to do it in a multiple different ways. So you may have a phone call with someone. You definitely want as much written communication by email. You want to check social media. You want to listen to your local news, your radio, because all of those different types of communication can give you additional information that you didn't have. It also can alert you when things change, which does happen quite a bit. As Kat said, if there is a weather situation, which frequently happens, we know here in Oklahoma at a moment's notice, oftentimes organizers will have to cancel, really change an event, and you may not be the first person on their list to notify. But by being connected with social media, the news, and different ways that information is communicated in your neighborhood, you may get that information before they're able to call you. That frequently happens in particular in weather. So being connected in whatever way you can is going to make sure that you have what you need when you need it, or as much as possible.
So let's talk about what to do at the event. So I mentioned that I'm an introvert. One of the hardest things we can do is getting people to talk to you, but we want to emphasize that you can do this. You really can. So, the Myers-Briggs, I just lost the word. Thank you.
Types.
Personality types. I am an INFJ and Tracy is an ISFJ. So we are really not extroverts, but for brief periods, like typically the length of an event, we can pretend. So a couple of years ago, as part of my MLIS, I did, well, it was not a structured part of my MLIS, but as it was an information visualization class that was amazing. And so I did a very informal poll. This is not in any way scientific, but it was just a, hey, tell me your personality type, on the ALA think tank group on Facebook. And this is what I found. So this is 10,000 people on that group. I only had, I think, 130 people respond. But as you can see there were no ESTPs, none that responded. And the vast majority were INFJs, which supposedly is one of the most rare personality types in society as a whole. So apparently we're all just in the library. Yes. So those first three big circles there are all introverts. Then there's, a few extrovert types, but the vast majority are introverts.
And keep in mind, when you are doing this type of work, the way I always think about it, I'm not representing me, Tracy, I'm representing my organization. So that takes the pressure off, because I know my job, I know my organization. So I'm not representing Tracy, I'm representing Tulsa City County Library. So that really, once I really was able to get clarity on that approach, that really relieved some of the pressure and some of the discomfort that can come if you're not an extroverted person who is just naturally attuned to doing this type of work. So I would encourage people to keep that in mind.
So in this slide, we have 5 library employees, and Tracy's in this slide. But of those 5 people, only one person is the extrovert, but they're all playing extroverts very, very well. I happen to know that the person in the middle is the extrovert. Everybody else are introverts, but they do great. Everybody does, because one of the things that comes through is that they love the library and they love talking to people about the library. And in this particular one, they're handing out candy. Who doesn't love candy?
And we all love connecting our communities to the library. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. Meeting people where they are and connecting to everything that the library has to offer. So it's very, very rewarding. But again, as she said, there's only one person that is an extrovert. And I would say on our team in outreach, that's also the case. We have one super, super strong extrovert, and the rest of us are pretty much on the introvert scale, different levels, but most of us are pretty introverted. But when it comes to doing this work, we're engaged, we're passionate, enthusiastic, and we know how to turn it on. So.
And only 2 of the people in this picture are outreach staff. The other 3 are branch staff. So this is one of those partnerships that's very, very productive. So this event typically has, 10,000 people at it, although we don't talk to all 10,000 people, obviously. But this is another one of those partnerships between outreach staff and branch staff. So I have at the top, it says, don't be afraid to come up from behind the table. You can see there are no library staff actually behind the table in this picture. I am standing in front of the table taking a picture, so you can't see me. But one of the things that can be good when you have a big event like that is if it's more than just you. If somebody is out from behind the table and kind of doing crowd control and explaining kind of what's going on and being that kind of primary, well, crowd control, more or less. That can be really helpful. So this picture is a Touch a Truck event. That's Martin Library, where Tracy and I both have ties. And our bookmobile is there, and you can see there's also a Cox truck and a News on 6 Storm Tracker truck. There are a whole bunch more outside of the frame. But what I wanted to talk about here is that even though this is at a library, we talked to people at that Touch a Truck event who never went in the library. They were only there for the vehicles. So that's a different audience, even though it is at the library and is technically a library event. It's really different to do a Touch a Truck. So if you can be there as a library person, that is an awesome thing to do. But News on 6 and Cox obviously are not nonprofits, but we still build those relationships. And so, you know, a news channel is always a good contact to have. You may have a department that handles that kind of a thing. But, you know, it's if you can go and say hi to people and introduce yourself and say, you know, I'm with the library, you know, isn't this a great event? That's always a good communication and community building thing.
Definitely get to know the other participants, because the outreach world is very small. And you will see some of the same faces and organizations over and over again. So it's really, really important to get to know not just, of course, the public that's there, but also the other participants that are there, the other vendors, because you'll see each other again, and they may have information, resources, services, again, that you can bring back to your staff, to your customers, that they will need. So that really relationship building, you can't deny how important it is.
And sometimes those relationships will translate into having them come and do programming for you. So that's a good thing too. You know, for example, the News on 6, kids love talking about and hearing about weather events. So you could come and have them do a kids program. So you never know how those relationships are going to pan out, but it's always good to go and at least say hi.
And one exciting thing that happened this year with the pandemic is we had several Touch a Truck events scheduled for our library system, and we were not able to have them, obviously, but we were able to connect with our vendors, and we have a virtual Touch a Truck. So we're able to take some version of that experience and make it available online. But because we had those relationships built with the other participants in our real life Touch a Truck, we were able to use those relationships and provide some comparable experience during these interesting times that we're all in. So relationship building is key.
Which feeds into this next one, which is something to write on can be very useful. And one thing that I would do, especially at these events, is always have business cards. They may not be your business cards. I handed out a ton of Tracy's business cards, which sometimes resulted in some interesting phone calls. But it was a good way to say, oh, here's the outreach person. If you need something, this is the person to call. And on the back, I would write what we talked about so that they would have that refresher and not just have some random person's business card in their pocket. So having that contact information is really good. But if you don't have that, just some pieces of paper, it's always surprising what you need to write down when you're at an event. So trying new things. They don't always work. I'm going to be honest. They don't always work, but it's important to try because it may work in one place and not in another. So we tried a couple of different things in this photo. If you notice, there's the blue bin down at the front left. That is full of books that people were able to check out. So this was an event where families typically would come. They could tour the museum. We had a bunch of different tables. It was us, typically other community vendors, partnerships, all kinds of different things. So it was always a good mix of people. But what we found was that the kids were very interested in the books, but they didn't always have a place to carry them. Parents didn't want to fill up their whole stroller with books. And then on the way out, nobody wanted to stop because all they wanted to do was go home and nap or go get lunch. So we ended up taking, I think, 95% of the books back with us. And we tried that a couple different times and decided that was not something that we really were getting a lot of value at, especially not for the amount of work involved.
And even if, as Kat said, even if something doesn't work well, you will definitely learn something. Oftentimes, we got our biggest lessons by the things that didn't work. Whether it is that we didn't need to take books to this event, or there are some other events where we definitely needed to take books, and we did not realize that initially. We went in with an idea that having books to check out, no one would want them, they wouldn't have space, but actually there was a great need for books in other events. So getting outside of your comfort zone and being okay with the fact that everything won't be 100% success is a good thing. But what can you learn from those things? What can you duplicate or not duplicate, move forward? And really that's the lesson that you learn in outreach, is that you try it. If it doesn't work, you try something else. And if it does work, you keep doing it until it doesn't. So definitely getting outside of your comfort zone and being okay with being a little uncomfortable is a good thing.
Yes. So another thing that this photo shows that didn't work particularly well is, you see the signage there, it says Storytime Tour. There was not a whole lot at first glance at this booth to show that we were the library. So we do have a library branded tablecloth that you've seen already in some other pictures. We have a couple of those, but that signaling that we are the library turned out to be pretty important. So when we have that tablecloth up, we get a lot fewer questions about, what are you? That's a question we got a lot. What are you? What are you here for? And it's always interesting to have somebody come up and say, what are you? So that's a little disconcerting, but you get used to it. So just thinking about branding as a library, not necessarily as, like the Tulsa City County Library, that's good, but the library, that's the important key in that. So one of the things that I am definitely guilty of at outreach events is having way too much going on the table. At first I was like, everybody needs to know about all these wonderful things that we're doing. And many times the table is completely covered. When somebody walks up to that table, it's like, I can't look at anything. There's too much going on. I can't actually see anything. So we started trying to have like these little areas. So we had the seed library, which is a huge pull for people, or at least it has been in the past. And so we always had that kind of in a prominent place. And then down the table, we'd have a few things, but as time went on, we would have fewer and fewer things. We would have them in, you can see in the back there, there's a cart that has stuff in it. We would have pretty much every handout we could get in there, but we didn't put it all out, but we wanted to have it. When somebody asked about it, we could say, oh, I have information on that. Let me grab that so I can hand it to you. So a little bit different way of doing things. There in this picture, you also see stickers. Stickers are one of those things that you should take to every single event. They don't have to be fancy stickers. They just need to be stickers.
Stickers.
Mm-hmm.
People love stickers no matter how old they are, no matter how happy they may or may not seem to be at this event. A sticker puts a smile on their face. And a sticker, like a lot of this, can be a connection, a way to start a conversation with someone. So stickers. And most of us have stickers lying around, if nothing else, from old summer reading program, from story times, we have stickers. Stickers, cut them up, and they are a big hit. I can't tell you how much work you can get from a simple sticker.
And if the event is dead, if you bring scissors and stickers that aren't cut up, you can sit there and cut them up for the next event.
Yes.
So, we would do that sometimes because we tended to, the introvert thing of being over prepared. We would go pretty much the earliest we could and get everything set up, because invariably something comes up that you weren't expecting. Maybe you have to go get an extension cord, or maybe you have to completely move your booth around. There are all kinds of things that can come up. So we would always go early and then sit there and wait for people, for the event to open, and kind of just enjoy the peace, because, our anxiety would be lower because we had everything set to go.
And one benefit about being there early as well is you usually get the best parking. So keep that in mind. If you're taking all of these things and this equipment and so forth, parking can really be a plus, where you get to park in terms of loading and unloading. So getting there a little early can actually be a good thing.
Absolutely. And at the end of the event, when you can walk a lot shorter distance than the people who got there right before the event, that's good. That's really good.
Very
that's
good.
One of those nice things. Because typically, again, as an introvert, you're exhausted.
Yes.
So it's not just that physical exhaustion, it's the emotional exhaustion of dealing with people. And so, which is, it's not bad to deal with people. It's just, as an introvert, it sucks your energy and you need to kind of recharge.
Definitely.
So having a short walk to the car is a good thing. That's something I kind of looked forward to, is, oh, thank goodness I don't have to walk very far. So coming back again to standing next to the table is better than behind it. This was an event that we attended for a few years until it kind of fell apart. This was one where it was a bunch of Tulsa community organizations, and we were marketing to downtown business people. So this, you know, I talked about wind once. This was a wind tunnel, and it was usually cold. This was for Earth Day. And so the wind would come screaming through the buildings. And anybody, you see the concrete holding all the tents down, that was absolutely needed. And you had to make sure that your tablecloth was secured and that your papers were weighed down. So there was a lot going on. So I spent a lot of time making sure that my stuff was not blowing away, and then catching other people's stuff that had blown away and returning it to people. This a lot of times, you know, before the event started, because during the event you don't necessarily have time for that. But it was a good way to talk to other people. And so I ended up making a connection with a Tulsa Transit Authority person. And I was able to get, it's not all me. I can't take all the credit for it, but I was one of the voices that said we need to have printed bus guides. So I was able to get that information into the right ear, I think, because then they printed bus guides again after that. So I'm sure I was not the only one who said that, but for that to come from me and say, our library customers, our library patrons need printed bus schedules, not just an app. That I think was a really important thing for our community that, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that nobody knows happened, which is, I don't need credit for that, of course, but I feel good that I was able to be a voice for that. So you never know where talking to other vendors is going to come in. It's always interesting. There's always some little thing that can come out of an event.
And you never know who you're talking to, who those vendors are. We frequently at events will be talking to board members, presidents, VPs, people that are in administration in different organizations, and we're able to connect with them and share our message, learn what they do. You also never know who may know important board members in your organization, your administration. So you never know who you're talking to. You never know what that relationship may lead to. So standing next to the table and making yourself available and accessible is really, really a good thing, and something I would encourage everyone to do, even if it's a little outside of your comfort zone. It does give you some wins.
It does. So this is an event that we obviously didn't do it this summer, but our library system participates in Storytime in the Park. And so we bring in entertainers, you know, sometimes it's musicians, all kinds of different things, magicians, performers. And so we would set up the library, you know, library table and sign people up for summer reading program. It was always hot. It's always June and July. And as you know, in Oklahoma, it is hot. So the first year, I don't think we had enough water, and I got sunburned. I sunburn easily anyway, but I got sunburned. So you need to be sure, as you know, this is part of that information gathering, make sure that you know, is there going to be shade if it's an outdoor event? Do you have water? Do you have access to water? Because you're going to drink a lot of water, hopefully. And then the other important thing is, do you know where the restrooms are?
Yes, what do you need to do for self-care? Yes, you are working, but what is it you need in order to make this as successful for you? Because if you're uncomfortable, your patrons and your customers will be able to sense that as well. So not only water, is there mud where you're going to be? So you need to dress appropriately. Is there potential for rain? Always have an umbrella or a raincoat. Is there parking sufficient for you to load and unload? Do you have electricity? So what are the things that you're going to need to do your business, and also to be as comfortable as possible while you are out at the event? That goes back to that information gathering. And oftentimes it's a good idea, in particular if it's somewhere you haven't been before, to actually do a quick drive-by before the event. Because as you're talking to organizers, they can tell you what's important to them and what they see, but you know what it is you need. And so by actually, if you have an opportunity of driving by to see, then you'll be able to gauge pretty quickly if this is going to work, if it's not going to work, what you're going to need. And often you can take those advanced visits and have a conversation with the organizers and say, we went out to look at the space that you said, and there's not enough parking for us. Or it would be great if we could potentially move to this certain spot or whatever it may be, and have a conversation. So if you have an opportunity to go out beforehand and check out the space, and sometimes the only thing you can do is you can go on Google Maps. You can do some of those librarian research skills, talk to people you know, to get a sense of what is this space actually like. Because oftentimes what you're told and what it ends up being are two very different things. Very, very different. But water is so, so, so important. At this event, oftentimes, by the time we were out there for an hour and a half, we were so hot that we would have to go back to the office and change clothes. There would be some staff that once we got back to our office, they would actually take their lunch break and go home and shower quickly and come back to the office. So you have to be prepared, again, for that weather, because we've been rained on, snowed on, tornadoes, lightning, 110 degrees, you name it. When you do outreach enough, you're probably going to have some interesting stories that people can't possibly believe could happen at the library, but they do.
Yes. Yeah, and bringing water, we keep going over that, but it's so important. It really is. Indoors, outdoors, bring water. You cannot always rely on the event having water for you or having water available. So that's, I think, honestly, one of the biggest tips that we can give as outreach staff to non-outreach staff is bring water.
And bring, along with that water, bring stickers and bring pencils.
Yes.
If you can bring nothing else but yourself, those three things will give you an opportunity to take care of yourself. You may have to actually share your water with some of the customers, the patrons, if someone has an emergency. So you're being a good citizen, helping your community. But a pencil and, again, stickers, I can't say enough, can go a long way.
Yes. Yeah. So those giveaways, they allow you to start a conversation. There are a lot of people who glance at you and like, oh, I don't want to talk. I'm just here. I just want to look at your table, or they move on. You say, oh, do you want a pencil? And they're like, what? Would you like a pencil? It's a free pencil. And they're like, okay. And they look at it and they're like, oh, you're the library. I love the library. So it just kind of helps break that, when people are in crowds, they're just so overwhelmed sometimes. And so it helps kind of break them out of that mindset, and so you can engage with them. And then once you start talking to one person, a lot of other people say, oh, what are they talking about? So using that human nature, that human curiosity is a good thing. So on this table, we've got chip clips that had our brand on them. We didn't have very many, but that sparked a lot of conversation. Of course, we have our pencils and stickers. So we were starting to have fewer things on the table at once there, which was a good thing because people can actually kind of look and see things. But those stickers, we learned to only put like 10 or 15 out at a time and then continually refresh, because there are a lot of kids who will sit there and look at every single sticker. And you may only have 6 different types of stickers, but they're going to look at every single sticker. And if you put 100 stickers out and they're all the same of 6, they're still going to look at every single sticker.
And sometimes, depending on the situation, you may only put out 1 sticker. You may put 100 of the same sticker. That way, they have limited choices. You can still have a conversation. But too many choices, as Kat said, can be a little overwhelming for some people. So sometimes limiting the number of options that you have for giveaways can be a really good thing. We frequently take books to give away at events. And depending on the event, we may only take 1 book title, and we may have 50 copies of that same book, and that is the book we have. It fits in with the event or some other bigger program we may have going on in our system. But having 50 different books may not be a win-win at every place. So sometimes less is more, depending on what the giveaway is and the population, the environment, and the event.
And the same goes for coloring sheets too.
Yes.
So one of the benefits of having kids sit there and look at your stickers is that you can start to talk with the parents. And so sometimes you can talk to the parents about a different service that they didn't know about or something online. So sometimes that can start another conversation there too. So they're good and bad to having too many stickers, but typically fewer choices is better. So again, don't be afraid to come out from behind the table. The person crouched down in the front in the brighter blue shirt is one of our extroverts. And she probably spent, when she would attend this event, she spent a lot of time crouched down talking to kids, which was great. The parents loved it because the kids were a little bit distracted by Suzanne. And so they could have another little conversation on the side or have a little bit of a break. And the kids were entertained because here's this adult sitting, you know, getting down to their level and talking to them. So like I said, and keep repeating, don't be afraid to come up from behind the table. Obviously, I'm sitting behind the table taking the picture. So, but she had that covered. That was fine. But one thing to remember is even as you're being very personable and you're talking to people, don't forget that you are representing the library. So, you know, watch your body language, make sure that you're not sitting there with your arms crossed and your head down, not making eye contact. I mean, that's okay to kind of refresh for a second, but you want to make sure that your body language is open and you're making eye contact with people. If you can't get around to the front of the table or to the side of the table, stand up. Standing up also signals that openness to conversation. Again, if you're just kind of sitting there and you're leaning back and you're kind of turned away, or it's signaling that you're not approachable. So just be sure that you're signaling with your body language that you are open to conversation and talking. So brand recognition, and by brand, I don't just mean your library itself, I mean a library. It's important. People recognize you as being an information professional, and so they will trust you and the information that you share. So this particular event, if you notice, our table is kind of in the center. The tables there to the left in this picture are the event organizers' tables. And what happened for 3.5 hours is we got the same question over and over and over again. Where do I get the boxes? Where do I get the boxes? And so we answered the same question over and over, sometimes 3 or 4 times a minute. And it was important to maintain that same, it's right over here, just keep going, you'll get there, you know, and be smiling and professional the whole time, because that person was asking the question for the same time. You may be answering it for the 3,000th time, but to them, it is a new question. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that, you know, during SRP and answering the same question over again, but it's just something to keep in mind.
And people may or may not know who you are as the library, but if they don't, you can help them understand who you are. And if they do, maybe you can introduce them to some new service, some new resource that they didn't realize you had. So that brand recognition can go a long, long way to starting some of those conversations that you may not have otherwise if they didn't recognize who you were as an organization.
So this is kind of silly, but it's also rather serious. We are information professionals. We are typically trusted. And so one of the questions we get a lot, pretty much does not matter what event, where you are in the tables, you will be asked where the restroom is. And you can literally be somebody's hero if you know the answer to that question and can tell them where it is. It's an important thing to know, not only for you, but for everybody you talk to. So one of the other things that we got asked a lot and we learned is if there is a map of the event that is being given out to people, get like as many copies as you possibly can, because you will hand them out, because you are information professionals and people trust you to give them information. You know, we are the Google for a lot of different people. And so they will come to us and ask questions. So if you know where the restroom is, that's a really good thing.
And anything you know about the event, again, even if it's not your event, is only going to help you. There have been many instances where we will have to actually get up from our table and take someone to the bathroom or to the information desk or point them where lunch is being served, whatever it may be. So in many ways, you are representing your organization. But again, as an information professional, you are a point of contact of information. So even if it is not your event, if people know you're from the library, they are going to ask you something about that event. How long has it been here? Where's the restroom? Why are they having this? Some of those basic kind of reference type questions that you may be asked, they may ask you. So the more information, and again, any research you can do, information you can bring with you when you come to the event, I always think it's a good idea getting there early. Again, that you walk around so you can get a layout of the space. You can find out who else is there. Are there any really special things that are being given away or any special presenters, so you can have a sense of the day of the events, because you will be asked just because people know you're the library. So the more information you have, the better off you will be able to help and serve the other people at the event. So know where the restroom is, definitely.
So I also want to point out that library participation does not always equal books. This is a program that I have done. I know a lot of other people have done it too, where it's an adult coloring program. And so I would go, and lots of other people would just go with pencils and markers and things printed out from the internet. You know, there are all kinds of different adult coloring websites where you can print things. And I did a Zentangle program at one point, and people loved it. There wasn't a pressure to read. And so it was appealing for a lot of lower literacy adults. But it's just one of those relaxing things too. You know, there's been a big push lately about adult coloring as a relaxation method. So as people are sitting there, there's talking, there's a lot of just organic conversation. And just because you're there, it often turns to libraries. And, you know, somebody's looking for a particular book or whatever. And so it's one of those ways to continue making that connection with your community.
And one of the, I think, favorite, most exciting, rewarding programs that we recently did in outreach was a photography program. We visited some of the adults at our low-income housing communities that we serve, and they were able to actually have their photograph taken, and they received a copy of the photograph. And for many of us, because of our smartphones, you may wonder, why is that important? Why does that matter? But it really did help us connect with our customers. It helped them to be seen, not just as someone who lives in low income housing and whatever that may mean or not mean. It also gave them something tangible that they could have with them. Many of them, not only did they have themselves, of course, in a picture, but they may have brought a pet, a grandchild. They may have bought a picture of a loved one they had. So it really did allow them to be validated and also to connect with each other, because as they were waiting for their photos to be taken, they were talking to each other, playing music. Someone played their guitar, they may be coloring. And of course, we were able to talk to them about all the different things that we had to offer, but that had nothing to do with books at all. That was just a different way to connect with a community that we often were bringing books and movies and materials with. So it is definitely one of the best programs that is a little outside of the box, that people may not think of, but it is truly one of the best things we've ever done in outreach. I can't speak highly enough of it. So thinking outside of the box and not just focusing on books, although books are bread and butter. I admit that, and we do give away quite a few, but are there other talents you have amongst your staff, amongst yourselves, that maybe you can take as a different way to serve your customers? And oftentimes adults can be a population that we overlook. Many organizations, we focus our resources on children and story time and family, but there may be adults in communities in your neighborhoods that having some type of program could really be a benefit to them.
So no matter what, your love of libraries will shine through. So, you know, you can always focus on that as a reason to get out and do an outreach event. So the last part of this is after the event. You're not done when the event is over. So the first thing you want to do is send an email, cement that working relationship, say thank you, we enjoyed it, confirm any attendance numbers, because you'll probably have to report those. Make sure that you give any feedback and ask for feedback. Be careful about what feedback you give, of course, but this is a very good time to ask for feedback. And then if you want to, lay groundwork for the next event. Say, you know, this was great, we'd love to participate next time, please keep us in mind for your next event. So this seems kind of silly, but it is a very important part of the whole process. So after the event, take a little bit of time to relax, think about what was great, what was not great, maybe write all these things down. What should you have brought this time that you didn't, or what was absolutely not worth bringing? What would you do differently? Would you park in a different spot? Would you bring snacks? Would you bring cash for a vending machine? There are lots of different things that you maybe, you know, weren't immediately obvious. And then if you have any other thoughts, Tracy mentioned a file that we have about different events and ideas, things to know, because sometimes you only do an event once a year. And if you're like me, so much has happened in that year that it might as well be 10 years ago for what you remember as far as details. So having that list of information about the event, details, all that kind of thing can really, really be helpful. Plus, if you don't end up going to that event the next year, the next person will have that to fall back on.
You know, I think one thing to think about is, what do you wish you had known? What do you wish you had asked before, that would have made that experience even better than it was? And documenting that can help you for future planning, whether it's this event or other events. What did you learn from it? And you often don't know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And you don't know it until after it's all said and done. So what do you wish you had known or asked before the event can be a really, really big question for learning for you moving forward.
Yes. So that big event that started at Martin and moved outside of Martin, that has all run together for most of us. We don't know which year what happened. So having that document to fall back on is pretty good. So after you've pondered, you're going to want to gather statistics and attendance. So that falls back to, emailing people and making sure you have all that information. You want to collate any feedback. So many times people have talked to you and given you feedback at the event. You want to make sure you have any of that and have it all in one place. And then this is the important part: write reports and share them. Your people above you, or any partners that you work with at the event, they've all have information. So you want to make sure that everybody has the right information and that you can share it both sideways and up.
And one thing when it comes to statistics to keep in mind, attendance is, in the outreach world, there's this ongoing conversation about visibility as a number and actual interaction with actual people. So how does that fit into your organization? Some organizations, if there were 10,000 people at the event, they will count that, because that exposure, that visibility is priceless. And even if you don't actually interact with 10,000 individuals, them seeing your tablecloth, you wearing a logo t-shirt, then picking up a flyer, is you connecting with the library, while other people will solely focus on actual people that you interact with, that you have a conversation with, you give something with. So think about how those two numbers can fit into what you're doing in your organization.
So the event is not done until you have cleaned up and reorganized everything. So anything that you have brought with you to the event needs to go back to where it belongs, so you can find it easily when you go to the next event. It's by far the least fun thing. But if you have a bin of stuff and you just take it back to your office and it sits there for a week or a month or more, you're not done. You need to finish that. You need to get it put away so that you can say, okay, I'm actually done with this event, and it can move into the past and we can move on to the next thing. So
definitely. But I am guilty of the bin in my office. It's just there. It's my standard, but I'm guilty of that. But I have the luxury of, I'm the only one that uses that bin. So you definitely, as a part of this cleaning up and reorganization, it allows you to be nice to your colleagues and show grace, of course, to yourself, but also to them. If you're sharing bins, if you're sharing handouts, coloring sheets, organize them and clean them up only helps to have your colleagues be ready for the next event whenever that comes, because especially they may not have that 6 weeks.
Yeah. And especially if you borrowed something from a different department.
Yes.
That's super important. All right. So we have tortured you enough. That is it for us. If you have any questions that you think of after this is our contact information. You are more than welcome. We can talk about this all day long, as you can tell.
Yes, indeed. Contact us, contact us, contact us.
All right. Well, Kat and Tracy, thank you so much. I have a few follow-up questions that I've thought of along the way. Personally, I aspire to be able to do what you guys do. But for some people, that might be a little daunting. They might not have previously thought of outreach. So for those people who are just getting started and dipping their toe in, can you give some first steps to kind of, break it down a little bit? Like, if you do nothing else, this is what we recommend you do to get started.
I'll start. I would say, if you do nothing else, in your buildings, you may have a meeting room. You may have groups that are meeting in your facility somewhere. Go over to those groups and see if you can talk for 5 minutes about the library. That is outreach. That doesn't require any special equipment. That just requires you to be a little bold, perhaps. And they may never have thought about it, but they are in your space. So can you actually go and just talk to them, welcome them to the library? This month we have this new program. Did you know we have computer? Did you know we have genealogy service? Whatever they may be interested in. If it's a book club, did you know maybe we can help you find copies of that book? We have these resources. So just introduce yourself to some of those groups that are already in your building that you may not have thought of as a potential connection, because that is outreach. Anytime you're getting out from behind the desk, from out of your office, that is an opportunity for outreach. And you're already doing it. Every time you go and help that person at a computer, you go to a stack, you're already performing a form of outreach. So just get out a little bit more.
Okay, and to kind of piggyback on that, like, I think most schools nowadays have kind of a back to school type fair. So I think, you know, like going out to those is a great thing to do. But one piece of publicity information, like if you could just take one piece, what do you recommend, like they create using Canva or whatever they have? What would you suggest is your most successful?
Information about location and hours. Honestly, where can they find you and when are you available?
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, or the business card, as Kat said, because that's an actual person. Sometimes it's easier for people to contact a person as a gateway to the organization, but any of those, the simpler the better, oftentimes is the best way.
Okay. Yeah. And I thought when you were talking about, you know, making sure that the event aligns with your mission, and sometimes they don't, but people want the library there because, you know, it is good PR. So how would you recommend to tactfully decline participation in an event? Because it can sometimes be daunting. I mean, you know, and we don't want to be mean. Everybody loves us. So
I think stalling is a really good tactic, you know, to, you know, say, well, let me get all of the information and I'm going to need to check with my boss to make sure that we can do this. And then you can, you know, think about it and come up with some good reasons to not do it that aren't going to offend them or alienate them, because we don't ever want to say, I don't want to do that, you know, or what library doesn't belong there, you know. So you want to do it in a way that is professional and doesn't close doors on relationships, because you never know what can happen in the future. You know, people move from organization to organization, and if you already have burned your bridge, that can have long-reaching implications.
Right.
And, you know, people talk. So yes. Being able to say, I'm going to need to get back to you. Let me take your information and all the stuff that you need, and I will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, and give them a definite time. And then go and talk to your superior about that, or talk to other people and say, is this something we can do? And then you can always come back and say, we don't really think that this aligns with what we're doing right now. We don't have the staff for this, which many times is an honest answer. Please keep us in mind for your next thing, and we'll see if we can participate then. So
I frequently will respond that we're just not available. Give the least amount of information. We're not available at this time, but keep us in mind for future events. And then also, if you can determine that having a 6-week time frame, you have to have notice 6 weeks in advance, a month in advance, whatever that time frame is, that in and of itself can take care of a lot of requests. Now, if you get a request that is more current under that, then if you decide it is a good event, then you can, and you have availability, you can actually attend. But if you get an event that you say we require a certain amount of time of notice for the request and you don't receive that, that can often be the way, you know, I would love to go. This is a great opportunity, but we do require 6 weeks notice. And since it's only 4 weeks, we won't be able to do it this year. Keep us in mind for future events. So there may be some structural things you can put in place that will give you an out to be able to say, this is not a good fit for us at this time, or we don't have enough time, enough staff. But usually if you can, less is more. We're just not available right now to do this.
That's very good advice, because I know sometimes it can be daunting to tell somebody no. So that's really good advice. So when you were talking about the photography program, I was really interested in that. So did you take like a portable printer out there to print the photos while you were there? Like, how did you get the photos to them?
So we have a staff person who has some photography experience. So she took the photos, and then we actually were able to print them in our office. And then we would take them. So it gave us an opportunity and an excuse in many ways to have a second interaction with that customer. And we were able to deliver them to the customer. And then we actually have smaller versions of the photos in our bookmobile as a way to build community. So our communities can see we may visit this neighborhood on a Wednesday and this one on a Thursday, but we're all part of the bookmobile community. But I have seen some versions of this program where people actually have a portable printer and print them on site. So that is an option if you have the funding and the equipment and the staffing and all of those different things. But that's how we decided to do it in our organization.
Yeah, I think that's really nice, and it's a good way to reach a different population and stuff. And I mean, everybody loves to have pictures, and some people might not have the opportunity. So I think that that's a really great option. Okay, well, do you guys have any, before we finish up here, do you guys have any final thoughts that you would like to share? Anything? You've given a lot of great information.
I would say just get out there and do it.
Yes. And don't, I mean, our library system, the Tulsa City County Library, we have a lot of resources, and we're very fortunate in that. But not everybody does. And don't be afraid to go out and do these things, even if you don't have a tablecloth that has the library's name on it. You can still go out and be an ambassador for your library, even if you have just, a single page printout of information about your library, or a coloring page, or just something that gets you talking with people in your community. That's the point.
Definitely. 100%.
Okay, well, thank you again, ladies. You have given us a lot to think about and some great information. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this presentation. If you enjoyed this, I would encourage you to join the Public Library Division of OLA. We meet monthly. We discuss things like this every month. We have a different discussion, and it's all pertaining to public libraries. And lastly, I would just like to encourage you to remember to fill out your conference evaluations, and I hope to see you at more PLD sessions.